They say a wife's worst nightmare is watching her husband's love slip away. For Rosalie Pierce, that nightmare became a twisted fairy tale of greed, betrayal, and heartbreak. She once lived like a queen in a penthouse overlooking the sparkling city skyline, married to millionaire mogul Christopher Pierce. Yet in the blink of an eye, Rosalie found herself pregnant, abandoned and evicted by a mistress determined to claim every ounce of power in Christopher's life. What Vanessa Moretti didn't realize, however, was that Rosalie's greatest strength lay in her resilience. This is the story of how the scorned wife fought back and bought the entire building the following week. Rosalie Morrison grew up in a small, unremarkable town in southern Maine. Her parents, both schoolteachers, instilled in her a determination to succeed. Even as a teenager, she believed in true love and big dreams. She was driven bright and empathic traits that would eventually win the heart of a rising business mogul. Christopher Pierce was that man, tall, well-groomed, with an infectious charm that influenced everyone around him. He was older than Rosalie by nearly 10 years, already building a reputation for himself in the real estate sector. Their worlds first collided at a charity event in Boston, when Rosalie was a fresh college graduate, eager to find her place in the world. It was an unassuming December night. The charity function meant to raise funds for underprivileged youth. Rosalie had volunteered to help coordinate the gala, while Christopher was an honored guest due to his ongoing support of children's education projects. With her arms full of gift baskets, Rosalie nearly tripped over an extension cord. Christopher happened to be stepping out from behind a large decorative centerpiece at that exact moment, catching her before she fell. Their eyes met, and in that brief instant, the party's bustling atmosphere faded into a pleasant, muted hum. From that moment, their love story began. They chatted into the early hours of the morning at the fundraiser. Over the next few months, Christopher whisked Rosalie off on lavish trips and introduced her to the circles of the affluent black-tie dinners, insider real estate conferences, glamorous beach getaways. Yet behind the glitter, Rosalie would soon discover that the world Christopher inhabited was cutthroat rife with hidden agendas and relentless power plays. For a time, she was too much in love to notice. In her eyes, Christopher was her prince, charming, someone who used his fortunes to help people, even forging connections with philanthropic icons like Warren Buffett and Barbara Corcoran from Shark Tank. Rosalie felt proud that Christopher cared so deeply for giving back. The illusions of unconditional love, breathtaking romance, and financial security wove themselves into a tapestry of domestic bliss. After a whirlwind year of courtship, they were married in a grand ceremony in the south of France. Close friends, family, and business associates flew in to witness Christopher and Rosalie exchange vows. The event was on par with a celebrity wedding. Rosalie believed wholeheartedly that she had found her forever partner. Together they planned to create a legacy of love and compassion. Yet even during the honeymoon phase, small red flags began to wave. Christopher's phone was constantly buzzing urgent messages from business associates, suspicious calls in the middle of the night. Sometimes he'd disappear into another room for hours. When Rosalie would timidly ask if everything was all right, Christopher would laugh it off and say, "Real estate never sleeps, darling." Though slightly uneasy, Rosalie convinced herself that he was simply under a lot of pressure, trying to close multi-million-dollar deals. Their life post-honeymoon was an avalanche of activity. Christopher was launching an international expansion of his property development firm, Pierce & Co. Rosalie, forever supportive, left her modest non-profit job to become a full-time partner in her husband's philanthropic efforts. She believed wholeheartedly in the synergy of their relationship, that they could do more good together than they could alone. In the next 2 years, Rosalie and Christopher ascended to the pinnacle of success, hosting charity galas, buying vacation homes, and mingling with the upper echelons of society. Every fairy tale, however, holds its quiet storm. By the time Rosalie first realized she was pregnant, fissures were already forming in the foundation of their marriage. The day Rosalie found out she was expecting was meant to be a highlight of their marriage. She stood in the bathroom, trembling with disbelief, a positive pregnancy test in hand. Carefully, she broke the news to Christopher. To her relief, he beamed with excitement, at least initially. For a fleeting moment, Rosalie felt like everything would be perfect. But Christopher's enthusiasm waned sooner than she expected. He was often stuck in meetings traveling to London on short notice or courting new investors in Dubai for days at a time. Rosalie tried to be understanding. Pierce & Co. was in the midst of landing a series of crucial property development contracts. If those succeeded, Christopher's net worth would skyrocket, and his philanthropic dreams might become reality on a much larger scale. She wanted to be proud of him, but a quiet desperation nestled in her heart. She needed him more than ever, now that she was pregnant. The day of her first ultrasound, Christopher cancelled last minute, sending his personal assistant to fetch the black SUV from the hospital parking lot. Rosalie fought tears as the doctor confirmed her baby was healthy. She could only imagine how joyous that moment might have been if Christopher had been seated beside her, holding her hand. More suspicious signs appeared, cryptic text messages from unknown senders popping up on Christopher's phone, the lingering scent of an unfamiliar perfume on his suits, and late-night glimpses of him stepping into the hallway for hushed phone calls. One evening, Rosalie confronted him in their penthouse living room. She demanded answers about his repeated absences. "I feel like I'm losing you. Chris," she whispered, tears in her eyes. "Am I crazy to think there might be someone else?" Christopher's response was dismissive, alternating between anger and nonchalance. "Rosalie, you know me better than that. Business deals get complicated, and you're imagining things. I'm under immense stress. Show me some understanding." But that night, Christopher slept in the guest room. When Rosalie woke the next morning, he was gone. Little did she know there was indeed another woman lurking in the shadows of their marriage. Someone cunning, ruthless, and determined to have Christopher all to herself. Vanessa Moretti was a name whispered in business circles. Though rarely in polite company, she'd appeared as Christopher's strategic consultant, claiming to be an expert in international property acquisitions. She was an elegant brunette with sharp cheekbones, commanding the attention of any room she entered. Unlike Rosalie, who radiated warmth and compassion, Vanessa's energy was calculating, more reminiscent of a black widow spider, weaving her web. In reality, Vanessa had risen through unscrupulous tactics, forging relationships with powerful men and leveraging them to secure her position. She was well known for her unrelenting ambition. Once she identified a target, she wouldn't let go until she extracted every ounce of advantage. She had a knack for exploiting insecurities, forging alliances in secret, and then leaving her benefactors in ruins once she acquired what she wanted. Christopher's job made him an easy target. He was wealthy, well-connected, and evidently frustrated in his personal life. Their affair began discreetly in luxurious hotel suites during business trips. Vanessa soothed Christopher's insecurities, telling him that Rosalie would never understand the complexities of high-stakes deals and corporate politics. She painted Rosalie as a naive, small-town girl out of her depth, particularly in Christopher's new global expansion. Flattered by Vanessa's attentions and enticed by her worldly knowledge, Christopher fell deeper into her clutches. Soon, Vanessa arranged to position herself in the Pierce & Co. hierarchy. She convinced Christopher he needed her not just as a consultant, but also as the official director of global development. With full authority over critical decisions, She quickly ingratiated herself with Christopher's closest allies, including bankers, brokers, and even some board members at Pierce & Co. She created her own power base under Christopher's nose. Rosalie, meanwhile, found small clues that fueled her suspicions. She saw an email from Vanessa M. With heart emojis in the subject line. She noticed how Christopher's typically stoic personal assistant seemed to crumble into awkward silence whenever Vanessa's name came up. Desperate for the truth, Rosalie even reached out to an old friend, an IT specialist, who discreetly helped her access certain company records. There she discovered an unusual pattern of expense reports under the heading Corporate Hospitality, always authorized by Christopher, but often used by Vanessa. 5-star dinner bills, luxury spa trips, some in cities where Christopher was supposedly on business trips alone, just as Rosalie was preparing how to confront her husband more forcefully. Tragedy struck her father. Daniel Morrison suffered a massive heart attack back home in Maine. Concerned for her father's health, she rushed back for a week to help her mother with the aftermath. In that emotionally turbulent time, Rosalie tried to hold on to hope that Christopher would at least show up for her, but he never came to Maine. Instead, he sent flowers with a short note. "I'm sorry to hear about your father. Business in Dubai is urgent. Love you. Chris." That was it. Grief, frustration, and suspicion mingled, forging a steely determination within Rosalie. She resolved that once her father was out of danger, she would go back and insist on the truth from Christopher. Enough was enough. The day Rosalie returned to their marital home, a penthouse on the 25th floor of a newly built luxury skyscraper, remains etched in her memory as the day her life came crashing down. She was 5 months pregnant, exhausted from traveling and anxious about her father's recovery. A stony-faced concierge greeted her in the lobby, refusing to let her through without clearance. Confused, Rosalie explained that she was Mrs. Pierce, the owner of the penthouse. The concierge offered only a weak smile and directed her to the building manager's office. There, to her horror, she found Vanessa Moretti, seated behind a gleaming marble desk, tapping away on a laptop. Vanessa looked up with a smile that could freeze fire. "Rosalie, darling," how unexpected, she purred, as if speaking to an old acquaintance who had overstayed her welcome. Rosalie stared, dumbfounded. "What are you doing here?" "This is my home." Vanessa's lips curled. "I know this is shocking, but Christopher decided that in the interest of finances and upcoming changes, you should relocate. He asked me to handle the logistics. I'd hate for you to strain yourself in your delicate condition." Shock morphed into outrage. "Handle the logistics," Rosalie hissed, voice trembling. "This is my home. I'm his wife. If there's a relocation, Chris should have told me himself." "Where is he?" Vanessa let out a patronizing sigh and slid a set of documents across the desk. "As you can see, the penthouse lease has been transferred under my name." She emphasized the final words. "Your name is no longer on the occupant list. You need to vacate the property immediately." Rosalie's eyes scanned the documents. Indeed, the apartment, a property originally belonging to Christopher's holding company, had been swiftly transferred into a corporate shell that Vanessa controlled. The date of transfer was just 3 days prior. Her chest tightened. "This is insane. I'm his wife. You can't evict me from my own marital home." "Where is Christopher?" Vanessa rose, towering over the desk, with an almost triumphant glimmer in her eyes. "He's out of town for business, dear. Told me to manage this in his absence." "The building management has already been notified. If you resist, security will be called." Rosalie's mind spun. She couldn't believe that Christopher would authorize such cruelty, especially toward his pregnant wife. Unless He was under the thrall of Vanessa, or perhaps complicit from the start. Summoning every ounce of composure, Rosalie closed her eyes, took a steadying breath and declared, "I'm calling Christopher. If I can't reach him within the hour, I'm calling my lawyer." Vanessa's response was a disdainful shrug. "Be my guest, but I advise you to leave quietly. There's no use dragging this into a scandal. Christopher's a public figure, remember. You wouldn't want to tarnish his reputation." Now would you? The threat, thinly veiled, struck Rosalie to her core. She fought tears, but they came anyway, hot and furious. She snatched her phone, desperately dialed Christopher's number. No answer. Voicemail. She tried again. Same result. She texted him, "How could you do this? I'm being evicted from our home. Your mistress is behind it. Call me silence." With security guards closing in, Rosalie realized she had no immediate recourse. She wouldn't risk a public scene that might land in the tabloids. Heart pounding, she turned on her heel and walked away, tears blurring her vision. She barely heard Vanessa's final, parting words, delivered with poison-laced sweetness. "Safe travels, Rosie. I do hope you find something more suitable for your new life." Standing on the sidewalk outside her former home, Rosalie clutched her luggage and tried to steady her breathing. Pregnant and abandoned, she had to think fast. She immediately called her close friend, Helena Carter, who lived across town. Helena, an interior designer with a modest two-bedroom condo, answered with alarm. "Rose, I've been worried about you. You sounded so frantic in your messages. Are you okay?" That evening, Helena welcomed Rosalie into her condo. Though far less grand than the penthouse, it was warm, cozy, and filled with love, a stark contrast to the cold betrayal Rosalie had just endured. Helena's eyes widened in horror as Rosalie recounted Vanessa's chilling eviction. "That's illegal. This is insane," Helena exclaimed, furious on behalf of her friend. "You need to lawyer up, sue them. This can't be allowed to stand." However, Rosalie felt overwhelmed and embarrassed. Her father had just survived a heart attack, and she was 5 months pregnant. She couldn't stomach a public legal battle, especially when Christopher was refusing to speak to her. She tried calling his personal assistant, who stammered an apology and mumbled something about Christopher being unreachable. Messages to Christopher's business partners were met with polite deflections. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. Meanwhile, Vanessa texted Rosalie with more cruelty. "If you need money or help, don't be proud. We can arrange a settlement." A settlement. As if Rosalie was some disposable piece in Christopher's life. For the first time, Rosalie's heartbreak flared into determined anger. She refused to respond to Vanessa's provocations, but she quietly began collecting every piece of evidence. She had bank statements, text messages, proof of her shared finances with Christopher days turned into weeks. Helena's condo became Rosalie's temporary refuge. She spent hours poring over legal websites, learning about marital property rights. She discovered a grim truth. The penthouse technically belonged to the Pierce & Co. holding company. Christopher, as the controlling shareholder, had the power to reassign it without her explicit consent, especially since the property was purchased before their marriage and never formally transferred to both their names. While she would have a claim in a divorce settlement that could take months, if not years, to resolve. In the meantime, she was effectively homeless. Rosalie began to suspect that Christopher was deliberately hiding, possibly orchestrating a scenario in which she'd be desperate enough to accept some meager settlement. She was certain Vanessa had a larger scheme in mind, perhaps to isolate Rosalie, cut off her access to finances, and force her into submission. But they had underestimated Rosalie. She had something powerful on her side, her own quiet strengths, her resourcefulness, and unexpected allies. She discovered she still had a personal bank account, one that Christopher had once funded for her philanthropic initiatives. There was a significant sum left there, money Christopher must have overlooked or assumed she wouldn't use for her personal needs. At the urging of Helena, Rosalie reached out to an old mentor, Gregory Farnsworth, a retired real estate attorney, who had once admired Rosalie's kind heart and organizational skills during her non-profit days. Gregory listened in stunned silence as Rosalie explained her predicament. "I can't believe Christopher would do this," Gregory finally said, voice tight with indignation. "You need to fight back. The law might be messy, but you have rights, especially as his wife, with a child on the way." Rosalie sighed. "I'm not even sure if I want to remain married to him, but I can't believe he'd let that witch evict me. I need answers. I need closure." Gregory nodded. "You'll get them. I'll help you in every way I can. First, we need to figure out how to protect your finances and your share of any joint holdings. Then we'll see about confronting them on your eviction." Before Rosalie could muster a response, Helena returned from a short trip to the store, brandishing a folded newspaper. She pointed to the headlines, "Pierce & Co. announces new luxury building deal." The article mentioned how Christopher Pierce's firm had just acquired a downtown property with plans to convert it into high-end luxury apartments. The piece showcased a photo of Christopher, and standing confidently beside him, Vanessa Moretti. Rosalie's heartbeat hammered against her chest. Christopher, the father of her unborn child, had not just abandoned her, but was openly flaunting his mistress in the business world. Not a single mention of Rosalie or her pregnancy. A wash of humiliation spread through her, but also a flicker of defiance. She set her jaw. If Christopher and Vanessa thought she would remain quietly in the shadows, they were gravely mistaken. In the days that followed, Rosalie launched her own small investigation. She reached out to acquaintances still on staff at Pierce & Co. She learned that Christopher's board of directors was uneasy about how public this affair was becoming. They worried about a scandal affecting their stock value, especially if Rosalie took legal action. Meanwhile, Rosalie discovered a peculiar detail in the newly announced property's financial structure. The building's official ownership was still under negotiation. Pierce & Co. had locked down a preliminary deal, but a final acquisition hadn't been completed. That property was, ironically, the same building in which Rosalie had once hoped to open a new charity resource center for single mothers. She'd even accompanied Christopher on a site tour months ago. Tucked away in her inbox was a trove of inside knowledge about that building, the buyer's timeline, the renovation budget, the city permits. She had compiled it long ago, when she was assisting Christopher with philanthropic expansions, back when they shared dreams of building community spaces. Armed with this knowledge and the discreet support of Gregory Farnsworth, Rosalie realized an extraordinary possibility. If she leveraged her personal bank account and secured some additional funding, she might be able to outmaneuver Christopher's firm and purchase the building herself. It sounded insane. Pierce & Co. had enormous capital, but Rosalie had an advantage thanks to Christopher's neglect and Vanessa's arrogance. Rosalie was privy to details about the property that no one else outside Pierce & Co. had. She knew exactly how precarious the owner's finances were and how eager they were to sell quickly and quietly. Gregory's eyes widened when Rosalie presented the plan. "This is bold," he said. "You're going head-to-head with Christopher's company. They'll fight you." Hard. Rosalie's gaze steeled. "He evicted me, Greg. He's flaunting that mistress. I'm carrying his child, and he hasn't bothered to reach out. If Christopher wants war, I'll give him war." The biggest obstacle was capital. Though Rosalie had a not insignificant amount in her personal account, It was nowhere near enough to purchase a multi-million-dollar property. She needed backers. That's when she remembered an old contact, Rachel Henderson, a philanthropic investor who had once partnered with Rosalie on a community center initiative. Rachel had deep pockets, a passion for women's empowerment, and a personal dislike of corporate bullies. Rosalie arranged a private meeting with Rachel at a quiet bistro. Nervous but resolute, she laid out the entire story, leaving out none of the humiliating details. She concluded with her plan. I want to buy this building rebranded as safe, affordable luxury apartments for single mothers and families who need a fresh start. Think about it. Modern living spaces, on-site daycare, a supportive community. We can even have the resource center I once dreamed of. But to do this, I need major funding, and I need to move fast. Rachel pressed her lips in thought. You're telling me you want to outbid Pierce & Co. for this property, use it to do good, and stick it to your soon-to-be ex-husband? Rosalie swallowed hard. Essentially, yes. Rachel chuckled, though her eyes shone with admiration. Count me in. I've always liked you. Rosalie, you've got a good heart. And between you and me, it might be quite satisfying to see a real-life David and Goliath story. Let's discuss the terms. After a series of negotiations and the involvement of a few more discreet investors, Rachel knew from her network Rosalie was thrilled to discover they could indeed pull together a competitive offer. It would require nearly every last bit of capital Rosalie and Rachel could access. But if successful, it would be a brilliant coup won with a powerful moral victory behind it. While Rosalie prepared her bid, she received an unexpected phone call from John Claflin, a soft-spoken financial advisor at Pierce & Co. He was one of Christopher's oldest employees, someone Rosalie remembered as kind-hearted. John apologized profusely for how Rosalie had been treated. I'm taking a huge risk calling you, he said, voice hushed. But I can't stand by and watch Christopher be manipulated by Vanessa. She's pushing for more expansions, reckless ones in my opinion, and ignoring the philanthropic commitments we once made. I'm so sorry for what happened to you. Tears of gratitude welled in Rosalie's eyes. It's not your fault, John, but I appreciate you reaching out. He cleared his throat. Listen, I might have information that could help you. Our official final offer on that building is set to be submitted on Monday. Vanessa thinks we have an exclusive negotiation window, but ironically, the owners are upset with some last-minute demands from Pierce & Co. They might be open to a better deal if it surfaces. If you can come up with a strong enough bid, you could sneak in at the last second and snatch it. Rosalie's heart soared. Here was proof that her plan might actually work. Thank you, John. You have no idea how much this means to me. He paused, just... Be careful. Vanessa's dangerous. And Christopher, he's not himself. He might try to retaliate if he feels cornered. Rosalie smiled through her anxiety. I'll be careful, thank you. Thus with John's inside tips. Gregory's legal guidance, Rachel's network of investors, and Rosalie's own unwavering resolve, she orchestrated a stunning counteroffer. She aimed to submit it to the building's owners late Sunday, just hours before Pierce & Co.'s final negotiations. It was a gamble, one that could fail if the owners decided to stick with the devil they knew. But Rosalie couldn't back down now. This was her chance to reclaim her dignity, her place in the world, and secure a future for her unborn child. The sky above New York was leaden with snow clouds as Rosalie stood by the window of Helena's apartment, her breath fogging the glass. She was nearly 6 months pregnant now, her body heavier, her steps slower, but her mind sharper than ever. The building that once symbolized everything she'd lost was now within reach. Today was the day she would fight to claim it. Not for revenge, but for her child and for herself. At 10:00 a.m., wrapped in a cream wool coat and with a fire in her chest, Rosalie stepped into a chauffeured car beside Rachel Henderson, the philanthropic investor who had become not only her backer, but her believer. In the seat behind them, Gregory Farnsworth, her legal advisor, silently read through the last of the finalized documents. His steady presence calmed her, anchoring her resolve. Their destination, a boutique hotel downtown, where the building's current owners, the Ramirez family, were scheduled to meet for final negotiation. Pierce & Co. had assumed they would close the deal on Monday. It was Sunday. This was Rosalie's last chance to strike. The hotel's private conference room had none of the grandeur of a corporate boardroom, but for Rosalie, it might as well have been a battlefield. Her heart thudded with every step toward the table. She greeted Carlos Ramirez and his partners with warmth, sincerity, and no trace of desperation. She had learned the hard way. Power was not in how loudly you entered a room, but in how calmly you claimed your place in it. She began her pitch. No rehearsed theatrics. Just the truth. "I'm not here to outshine Pierce & Co. in profit," she said, her voice even. "I'm here to offer a different vision, one where community thrives alongside commerce." Then she laid it out, the Rosalie Haven. A luxury building with half its units reserved for single mothers and families in transition. On-site daycare, flexible leases, support programs. The kind of safe, dignified housing Rosalie wished she'd had when she was pregnant and homeless. Rachel stepped in next. Presenting the financial viability of the project, Gregory distributed the offer packet, everything prepared down to the last decimal. Carlos glanced through the folder, then looked up. "I have to admit, this is unexpected." Rosalie smiled steady. "So was my eviction." There was silence. Then Carlos asked, "Why this building?" Mrs. Pierce, a beat passed. Rosalie gently placed a hand on her belly and answered with conviction, "Because I was thrown out of it while carrying this child, because it once held everything I thought I needed, wealth, security, a future. But all that turned out to be fragile. What I want to build here now is something no one can take away, a foundation for others like me who need a second chance." The room held its breath. Carlos nodded slowly. "We'll step out to discuss. Please give us a few minutes." Outside the conference room, Rosalie paced each second, dragging like an hour. Rachel gave her a subtle thumbs up. Gregory murmured, "No matter what they decide, you've already taken your power back." Then the doors opened. Carlos returned, followed by the rest of the owners. His face was unreadable. "We've decided to accept your offer," he said, voice calm but sure. "It aligns with what this city needs. It honors the heart of the property. In a way, Pierce & Co. didn't." Rosalie blinked, stunned for half a second. Then her face broke into a disbelieving smile. "You'll need to finalize within 72 hours, Carlos added. "We trust you will." Rosalie nodded, her throat tight. "You have my word?" They shook hands. For the first time in weeks, Rosalie felt whole. That evening, as snow began to fall, Rosalie returned to Helena's apartment and stood on the balcony, eyes closed. The city buzzed below. Somewhere out there, Christopher and Vanessa still believed they controlled the story. But Rosalie had written her own chapter now. Not with rage, not with scandal, but with purpose. And brick by brick, floor by floor, she would rebuild not just a building, but a life worthy of her child. Monday morning arrived with a deceptive calm. The winter sun gleamed coldly off glass skyscrapers, and the city moved with its usual rhythm, horns, hurried footsteps, and the low hum of ambition. But inside the towering offices of Pierce & Co., the storm had only just begun. Vanessa Moretti was already dressed for victory. She wore a sharp red suit, tailored to perfection, her heels clicking across the marble floor like a warning shot. Her lipstick matched her confidence. Bold, unapologetic. Christopher trailed behind her phone, in hand, scrolling through emails. He hadn't slept much the night before. Something about Rosalie's silence since her eviction had started to gnaw at him. "I'll handle the pitch," Vanessa said curtly. "You just smile and sign." They stepped into the conference room where the building owners, the Ramirez family, were scheduled to meet them. Vanessa was all poise, all power. She adjusted her blazer, smoothing out imaginary wrinkles. She had played this game before, buying out legacy properties, pushing through aggressive deals, charming hesitant sellers. But today, the air was different. The owners sat with calm expressions that didn't match Vanessa's expected energy. There was no coffee offered, no handshake, just a long pause. Carlos Ramirez spoke first. "Thank you for coming. Miss Moretti, Mr. Pierce." Vanessa offered a dazzling smile. "We're pleased to finalize the deal today. I have the updated contracts here. Carlos didn't reach for them. That won't be necessary." She blinked. "Excuse me, we've accepted another offer." Silence. Christopher froze, his eyes narrowing. "What other offer?" Carlos exchanged a glance with his associates. "We had hoped for a smooth closing with Pierce & Co. But your last-minute attempts to renegotiate the terms were disappointing. You cut the price by almost 18% and added a clause that shifted all liability onto our family." Vanessa's smile faltered. That's standard negotiation strategy. Carlos remained stone-faced. "Not one we appreciated, especially when another party submitted a full-price offer, in cash with a better long-term plan for the property." Vanessa's voice dropped an octave, suddenly dangerous. Carlos looked at her without blinking. "Rosalie Pierce." The name landed like a slap. Vanessa went still, then burst into incredulous laughter. "Rosalie, that pregnant girl, you're joking." Carlos didn't flinch. She submitted an offer, backed by committed investors and a fully formed redevelopment plan. Frankly, we were impressed. Vanessa's composure cracked. She turned sharply to Christopher. "You said she had nothing left, that she was broke alone, licking her wounds." Christopher stared ahead, his jaw tight. How Vanessa hissed. How could she even know about this deal? Did someone on our team leak it? Carlos calmly interjected. "It doesn't matter. She knew enough, and she came prepared. Her bid was clean, respectful and visionary." Vanessa stepped back. Her breath, shallow face, flushed. No, this can't be happening." Christopher finally spoke, his voice low. "Are you sure the deal's signed?" Carlos nodded. "Letter of intent. Closing is scheduled within 72 hours. There's nothing more to discuss." Vanessa exploded. "Then I'll sue. I'll drag Rosalie through litigation. Hell!" She used insider knowledge. "She's my husband's wife. That's conflict of interest." Carlos stood. "You're free to do what you like, Miss Moretti. But we chose the buyer who treated us with dignity. And frankly, we're tired of threats." They were dismissed. Vanessa stormed out of the office, slamming the door behind her. In the hallway, her rage boiled over. "This is your fault." She snapped at Christopher. "You let her slip through. You said she was weak." Christopher's shoulders tensed. "You underestimated her. We both did." Vanessa jabbed a finger at his chest. "I told you to cut her off. Clean. Instead, you left loose ends. And now she's hanging us with them." "She didn't hang us," he said coldly. "She beat us fair and square." Those words stunned Vanessa into silence. Then came the shift, the unraveling, all the control Vanessa had wielded for months, the manipulation, the secrets, the dominance over Christopher and the company began to fracture. Christopher no longer looked at her with admiration or desire. He looked at her with clarity and disgust. "You said you'd protect my reputation," he murmured. "But it's crumbling under your schemes. The board's restless. Investors are whispering. And now Rosalie. Rosalie just made us look like fools." Vanessa's voice dropped to a whisper. "Venomous. You're pathetic. She'll ruin you, Chris." "She already has." Christopher didn't argue. He simply walked away. And Vanessa, left alone in the hallway of a deal she had lost in the building that had slipped through her manicured fingers, realized something she had never expected. She hadn't just underestimated Rosalie. She had awakened her. Late that afternoon, Rosalie was in Gregory Farnsworth's office, finalizing the next steps of the property transfer, when she heard a commotion in the reception area. She recognized the familiar timbre of Christopher's voice. Within moments, he barged in. Rosalie was momentarily stunned by his presence. She hadn't seen him in person since before her father's heart attack. Christopher's gaze swept over her, taking in her markedly pregnant figure. He blinked, as if the reality of her pregnancy was just now sinking in. "Rosalie," he said softly, voice tinged with regret. "Can we talk alone?" Gregory began to protest, but Rosalie nodded, wanting closure. She stepped into an adjoining conference room with Christopher. They stood in awkward silence for a moment, the tension thick. Finally, Christopher cleared his throat. "You caught me by surprise. Buying that building was bold." Rosalie folded her arms protectively over her belly, summoning her resolve. "You left me no choice. You cut me out of our home, my home. I had to find a new path." Christopher exhaled, his shoulders sagging. "I'm sorry, I didn't intend for it to happen that way." "Vanessa," Rosalie's eyes flashed. "Don't you dare blame Vanessa entirely. You're a grown man. You knew what you were doing. You can't rewrite history now." He lowered his gaze. "I know I messed up. Big time. I've made mistakes, let my ambition blind me, and Vanessa. I didn't realize how controlling she was until it was too late." He hesitated. "Rosalie, about the baby. I want to be in our child's life." Her heart twisted. "Our child." She forced a steady breath. "I'm not going to stop you from being a father, but you have to understand what you did is unforgivable. You abandoned me when I needed you the most." Christopher flinched. His gaze flicked to her rounded belly. "I had my reasons. I felt I couldn't give you the life you deserved. I let Vanessa convince me you'd be better off if you left. Quietly took a settlement. I see now how twisted that is." A wave of anger rose in Rosalie's chest. "You destroyed our marriage for reasons you still can't articulate. But let's skip the excuses. Why are you here?" "Christopher, really?" He took a step closer, voice earnest. "I'm losing control of Pierce & Co. Vanessa's orchestrating deals behind my back. The board is furious about the fiasco with the building. We're hemorrhaging good publicity. If the truth comes out, my affair, your eviction, the scandal could be catastrophic for the company." He paused, swallowing. "I need to fix this. We need to present a united front." Rosalie studied him for a moment, incredulous. A united front. "After you publicly humiliated me and let your mistress throw me out on the street, you expect me to fix your reputation?" She let out a harsh laugh. "You're delusional." Christopher shook his head, desperation creeping into his tone. "I'll do right by you and the baby. I'll transfer assets into your name. We can even work on philanthropic projects together again. Just please don't push for a public scandal or a nasty divorce. That's all I ask." Rosalie's eyes burned. She took a deep breath. "You're worried about money and reputation, not about me or your child. Don't pretend otherwise." He opened his mouth to protest, but Rosalie held up her hand. "Save it. If you truly want to be part of this child's life, we'll arrange custody when the baby is born. As for your company, deal with your own mess. I'm moving on." Christopher's face darkened, and he snatched at her arm. "You can't just cut me off. We're still married." She yanked free. "We won't be for long. I'm filing for divorce." The words struck them both like thunder. He seemed about to say more, but the sight of her unyielding expression stopped him. With a defeated slump of his shoulders, Christopher turned and left the conference room. Rosalie stood there, tears welling in her eyes, but her resolve unbroken. The subsequent weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Rosalie moved forward with the purchase, finalizing her ownership of the building. True to her promise, she and her team began crafting a plan to renovate the interiors, ensuring a portion would remain profitable, while simultaneously offering affordable units for single mothers. Rachel Henderson brought in a team of architects and designers, one of which was Helena, Rosalie's dear friend, who leapt at the chance to lead on the interior transformations. Meanwhile, news of Rosalie's purchase trickled through the city's real estate grapevine, morphing into a sensational rumor: Christopher Pierce's pregnant wife snatches building from Pierce & Co. The tabloids smelled blood. Vanessa Moretti attempted damage control painting Rosalie as an opportunist who stole insider information. But many reporters, especially those with philanthropic leanings, latched onto Rosalie's inspiring narrative, a scorned wife forging a path of empowerment, turning heartbreak into a community-focused victory. Gregory Farnsworth deftly handled Rosalie's legal matters, initiating divorce proceedings. Though Christopher tried to stall or negotiate for a more amicable arrangement, the process marched on. Public sympathy heavily favored Rosalie, especially when details of her eviction surfaced in the press. More than once, paparazzi hounded her, seeking a statement on how she felt about Vanessa's role. Rosalie, ever poised, refused to sling mud in public. She would simply say, "My focus is on the future mine and my child's." Inside the new building, soon to be rebranded the Rosalie Haven. At Rachel's suggestion, construction. Crews began the first round of renovations. Rosalie would often walk the empty halls, hard hat perched atop her cascading hair, imagining the bustling families that would soon fill these corridors. She thought of her unborn child, too, and how she wanted to create a world of safety and possibility for them. One afternoon, as she was overseeing the conversion of an unused storage space into a childcare center, she felt a gentle kick in her belly, her baby's first pronounced movement. Tears of joy blurred her vision. "Everything will be okay," she whispered to herself. "We're building our new home here in more ways than one." As Rosalie's fortunes rose, Vanessa's grip on Pierce & Co. loosened. Disgruntled board members, sensing the public's growing backlash, demanded Christopher distance himself from Vanessa. Key investors threatened to withdraw if the scandal continued to tarnish the company's image. Although Christopher tried to salvage the relationship with Vanessa, perhaps out of guilt or habit, the board effectively forced her resignation to stem the damage. Embittered and scorned, Vanessa lashed out one final time. She leaked sensitive information about Christopher's finances, claiming he manipulated philanthropic funds for personal gains. However, a swift audit proved her allegations were either exaggerated or false. Pierce & Co., reeling from the drama, parted ways with Vanessa for good. In a final blow, Christopher realized too late that Vanessa had siphoned a not insignificant sum from the company during her tenure. She vanished into Europe, rumored to be starting anew under yet another identity. The day Christopher discovered Vanessa's betrayal, he sought out Rosalie. He showed up at the Rosalie Haven, looking haggard as though he hadn't slept in days. Rosalie was on site, reviewing paint samples with Helena. As soon as she noticed Christopher's disheveled state, her first instinct was concern, but she quickly remembered all he had done. He confessed everything: Vanessa's theft, the board's demands, his regrets. I lost sight of who I was. He murmured, voice thick with sorrow. I hurt the one person who ever truly cared for me, and I sacrificed our marriage for a mirage. Rosalie, though moved by his honesty, remained firm. I'm sorry you had to learn the hard way, Christopher. But you did this. You let Vanessa in. I can't fix it for you. He looked around at the construction site, noticing the bright new signage reading, "The Rosalie Haven," in large gold letters. You've done well, Rosie. I'm proud of you, he said quietly. If there's any chance for us. Rosalie gave a sad smile. That door is closed. I'll never forget the way you treated me, especially during my pregnancy. We'll figure out co-parenting. But our marriage, it's over. Resigned, Christopher nodded, tears brimming. Rosalie led him out, staying calm. When he was gone, Helena gently touched Rosalie's shoulder. You all right, Rosalie? Inhaled, exhaled. Yes. For the first time, I actually am. Months flew by. Rosalie's pregnancy progressed healthily, albeit with the typical aches and anxieties of impending motherhood. Construction at the Rosalie Haven neared completion. The press, initially fixated on the scandal, turned their attention to Rosalie's philanthropic mission. Curious onlookers awaited the building's grand opening, a new model for real estate that balanced luxury amenities with community uplift. Rachel Henderson beamed at the progress. We're turning heads in the industry, she remarked to Rosalie during a walkthrough. Most real estate moguls think only about profit margins. You're proving compassion can be part of a successful business strategy. Rosalie offered a grateful smile. This was always my dream, doing real good in the world, not just living in some ivory tower. Christopher and I once shared that goal, but I guess we parted ways somewhere along the line. At 8 months pregnant, Rosalie still directed finishing touches with unstoppable vigor, from the sleek, modern lobby to the vibrant children's play area. She ensured the top floors housed premium apartments, some already pre-leased for substantial rents, while the middle floors were set aside for moderate-income families. The lower floors boasted community rooms, co-working spaces for single parents, and supportive services. It was a place designed to help families flourish. On a sunny day in early summer, the Rosalie Haven had its ribbon-cutting ceremony. Media outlets arrived in droves, capturing the powerful image of Rosalie, glowing with maternal pride, cutting the ribbon while cameras flashed. Rachel Henderson gave a stirring speech about empowerment and second chances, praising Rosalie's vision. Gregory Farnsworth was there, smiling like a proud father figure. Helena was at Rosalie's side, tears glistening at the success of their shared effort. To everyone's surprise, Christopher also showed up, standing quietly in the back. He made no attempt to overshadow the event, nor did he approach the stage. Rosalie noticed him and offered a polite nod. He returned it, understanding that any public display of regret would mar the day's positivity. He simply witnessed the fruit of Rosalie's labors, perhaps coming to terms with what he had lost. As the ceremony ended, families began touring their future homes. Smiles and laughter filled the hallways. Rosalie felt an overwhelming sense of peace. She stroked her baby bump, tears of happiness welling up. For the first time in a long while, she felt complete on her own terms. Though the main conflict seemed resolved, life had one more twist in store for Rosalie. Just a week after the grand opening, while sorting through old letters in Helena's condo, Rosalie came across a vintage document. It was a hand-signed letter from her late grandfather, an entrepreneur she barely remembered. In it, he revealed that he had once made an investment in a trust specifically for Rosalie's future. The letter mentioned a small but valuable portfolio of stocks and properties the trust never fully claimed had grown over the years enough to secure Rosalie's personal financial freedom, even if the Rosalie Haven encountered difficulties. Stunned, she immediately contacted the trustee, who confirmed the authenticity of the letter. She had unwittingly stumbled upon a safety net that ensured her philanthropic vision could expand. It was as if fate was rewarding her perseverance and decency. "That means you're truly independent," Helena gushed, hugging Rosalie. "You'll never need Christopher's money or anyone else's again." Rosalie smiled, tears forming. "It's amazing, I'll use it wisely. Expand." The Rosalie Haven concept may be open more like it in other cities. Despite the heartbreak, betrayals, and endless drama, Rosalie's future sparkled with promise, carrying forward her family's legacy in a way that served the greater good. She silently thanked her grandfather for this hidden blessing, feeling connected to her roots in a new, profound way. At 9 months pregnant, Rosalie gave birth to a beautiful baby boy named Daniel, after her father, Christopher, informed of her labor, arrived at the hospital. Though Rosalie allowed him to see his newborn son, she kept a respectful emotional distance. She had no intention of rekindling their marriage, but in those tender hospital moments, she acknowledged Christopher's role as Daniel's father. They agreed to co-parent respectfully, each forging new paths in life. Once recovered, Rosalie moved into a comfortable apartment in the Rosalie Haven. She wanted to live among the very community she had helped create. She greeted her neighbors daily, forging genuine connections with the families who found solace and hope in the building. The hallways, once cold and empty, now echoed with the laughter of children. The rooftop lounge overlooked a sunlit skyline, a reminder that every sunrise brought new possibilities. In the months that followed, Rosalie blossomed as a mother and an entrepreneur. She initiated support groups for single parents, mental health workshops, financial literacy classes. True to her philanthropic roots, she leveraged her connections with people like Rachel Henderson and even philanthropic icons she'd once met, alongside Christopher, like Barbara Corcoran, who commended her personally for her bold innovation in real estate. As for Christopher, rumors swirled that he was restructuring Pierce & Co. His public apologies and renewed commitment to charitable projects seemed genuine, but Rosalie no longer placed her happiness in his hands. Vanessa Moretti's name became a cautionary tale, whispered among business insiders, as someone who soared too close to the sun on borrowed wings. She faded from public view, overshadowed by the unstoppable tide of Rosalie's triumph. Though the divorce was finalized quietly, it was not an end tinged with bitterness. Rosalie found closure. She recognized that sometimes love stories transform, and that heartbreak can be a catalyst for incredible growth. She would always mourn the dream she once shared with Christopher, but she would not dwell on the past. On Daniel's first birthday, Rosalie hosted a small gathering on the rooftop garden of the Rosalie Haven. Close friends, mentors, building residents, and philanthropic supporters came together. They celebrated not just Daniel's life, but also the enduring power of resilience, as Rosalie cradled her son, letting him watch the city lights sparkle below. She reflected on the journey, how a scorned, pregnant wife, thrown out by a ruthless mistress, could rise stronger than ever before. Above all, She understood this truth. Wealth and status mean little without compassion and integrity. In forging her future, Rosalie had redefined what it meant to be wealthy, not in terms of money alone, but in community purpose and the unwavering courage to stand tall in the face of adversity. She had taken the heartbreak inflicted upon her, spun it into gold, and bought not just a building but her own destiny. In this incredible tale of heartbreak and triumph, Rosalie Pierce transformed a devastating eviction into a beacon of hope by marshalling her wits, compassion, and strategic alliances. She outmaneuvered a powerful husband and his ruthless mistress, ultimately buying the very building from which she was cast out. Along the way, she rediscovered her own resilience, forged a path toward independence, and created a nurturing haven for families in need. Rosalie's story reminds us all that betrayal and adversity can be the very catalysts that spark extraordinary change. Hers is a living testimony to courage, vision, and the power of believing in one's dreams, even when the odds seem impossible. He was the dashing mogul every ambitious entrepreneur wanted to emulate. She was the poised, loyal wife who had stood by him from humble beginnings. No one would have guessed that behind the gated mansion's manicured lawns, betrayal festered like poison. Until one day, in a flurry of financial sabotage, he let his mistress cut off his wife's credit cards. It was humiliating, scandalous, and only the beginning of a whirlwind that would pit powerful business alliances against each other. In a boardroom confrontation that stunned everyone, the CEO himself stepped in, but not in the way anyone expected. Buckle up. This is the story of love, greed, and revenge. Jordan Alberts was not born into luxury. He grew up in a cramped one-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of Milwaukee, where he learned to hustle by selling candy bars door to door at the age of 10. Over the years, Jordan's unwavering determination and charm propelled him into better circles. First at a local startup, then into his own tech company that caught the eye of an angel investor. By the time he was 35, Jordan was a self-made millionaire, a prominent figure on various entrepreneurial boards, and had connections with people like Mark Cuban, Bill Gates, and a few top executives at Google. His wife, Elizabeth Alberts née Wagner, had been with him through everything. They met in college at a small tech entrepreneur club meeting, both bright-eyed and dreaming of changing the world. Elizabeth came from a modest background, too. Her father was a retired auto mechanic, and her mother a homemaker. She'd studied communications with an emphasis on public relations, and it was through Elizabeth's network of contacts that Jordan first gained access to small local pitch events. While Jordan pitched his innovative software for automating small business tasks, Elizabeth made calls, arranged coffee meetups, and tried to capture the interest of potential backers. They married in a little chapel by Lake Michigan. It wasn't a lavish wedding, no star-studded guest list, no fancy reception at the Ritz. But to Jordan and Elizabeth, it felt perfect. A union built on genuine love, unwavering support, and a shared dream of building a life and a business empire together. Over the next decade, they grew from a modest condominium in Milwaukee to a stunning estate in Austin near Lake Travis, with a sweeping view of the water and rolling Texas hills. It was there at a philanthropic event organized by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation that Jordan's name landed on the radar of top-level investors. His company's smart automation technology was recognized for its potential to transform not just small businesses, but large-scale manufacturing and logistics. Soon after, Jordan's net worth skyrocketed from a mere $5 million to well over $200 million. For a while, everything was picture perfect. The marriage was strong, their personal synergy unwavering. Elizabeth handled some philanthropic duties, organizing events, acting as a goodwill ambassador for Jordan's brand, and forging new partnerships through her PR background. Their household staff adored them, describing Elizabeth as kind, gracious, and always mindful of the people around her. But money can be a seductive force, and success can open doors to darker temptations. Jordan began attending more exclusive networking events in Beverly Hills, New York, and beyond. Elizabeth was often at his side, but there were times she couldn't attend. Perhaps she was busy finalizing the details for a charity gala, or maybe she was simply burnt out from the unrelenting schedule. It was during these times, rare at first, then increasingly common, that Jordan got close to someone else. Her name was Ava Monroe. She was a rising star in the world of technology law, representing high-profile clients like Tesla, Amazon, and a few top-tier cryptocurrency exchanges. She had a reputation for being ruthless in negotiations, seductive in social gatherings, and unbelievably charming behind closed doors. The rumor mill started buzzing the moment Ava was seen at Jordan's table during a private dinner after a tech summit in Las Vegas. Elizabeth wasn't there. She had chosen to stay in Austin, meeting with a team of female entrepreneurs Jordan was mentoring. A few people whispered about Jordan's visible fascination with Ava, the way he leaned in whenever she spoke, how they clinked champagne flutes with an intimacy that suggested more than just business talk. No one knew for certain how fast or how deep it went, but soon the signs became undeniable. Lavish gifts appeared on Ava's social media, including a diamond bracelet, suspiciously similar to the ones Jordan's company had once gifted important clients. Photos emerged of Jordan and Ava at high-end restaurants in Manhattan, always carefully angled to obscure Jordan's face, though keen observers could still identify him by the sliver of a recognizable watch or the faint reflection in a mirrored wall. By the time the rumors reached Elizabeth, they were no longer rumors, but near-confirmed facts. She felt her chest tighten, her world spinning out of control. This couldn't be real. Jordan had always been a loyal partner. But the evidence was too compelling to deny. She confronted him in the privacy of their Lakeview mansion. At first, Jordan denied everything. Yet denial quickly turned into a half-hearted admission once Elizabeth presented him with photographic evidence, like a skilled negotiator used to controlling deals. Jordan tried to manipulate the situation, insisting that Ava was just a business associate, someone he occasionally had dinner with. But Elizabeth saw right through it. She had always been adept at reading him. A chill settled over their once loving home. Elizabeth, determined to preserve her dignity, demanded they enter marriage counseling, or at the very least step away from high-profile events until they resolved their issues in private. Jordan nodded, providing non-committal answers. He had never liked therapy, never seen the point in discussing feelings with a stranger. He agreed to her wishes on the surface, yet beneath the facade, he continued his involvement with Ava, allowing the illicit relationship to take root. This was the calm before the storm. For soon Elizabeth's sense of betrayal would pale in comparison to the massive financial and emotional blow about to come her way. Weeks passed. Elizabeth tried to focus on her philanthropic work and personal projects, attempting to distract herself from the growing chasm between her and Jordan. When a local charity she sponsored invited her to discuss future donations, Elizabeth discovered something shocking. Her personal credit card was declined. Embarrassment washed over her in front of the unsuspecting staff. She tried another card. Sure, it must have been a glitch, but that too was declined. The staff politely suggested she call her bank, and Elizabeth excused herself with a polite smile, her hands trembling as she left the office. Elizabeth called the bank suspecting fraud or an administrative error. but the bank's representative informed her that both cards had been cancelled the previous week. Under their joint account, they were tied to Jordan's finances, and evidently Jordan had authorized the cancellation. It felt like a punch to the gut. Why on earth would Jordan cancel her cards without her knowledge or consent? They had never had major financial disputes. Elizabeth always had access to family funds, albeit responsibly. She dialed Jordan, but the call went straight to voicemail. She sent him several frantic texts. No response. Later that evening, Jordan came home exuding an air of tired disinterest. Elizabeth confronted him the moment he walked through the door. Under the chandelier's glow, which reflected in her tear-filled eyes, Jordan brushed aside her questions with a dismissive wave. "I needed to consolidate our finances," he said, removing his blazer. "You can use the joint checking account for a while." "No big deal, no big deal." Elizabeth's frustration swelled. "You cancelled my credit cards without even telling me what's going on. Are you punishing me for something?" Jordan's eyes flicked away nervously, and that was when Elizabeth realized he was lying again. The next words that came from his mouth were not only shocking, but also laced with a cruelty she never imagined he was capable of. "Ava suggested we revisit some of my expenses. She found that you were spending frivolously. It made sense to limit credit usage." Elizabeth's heart dropped to her stomach. Ava. That woman was now meddling in their finances. As if the affair wasn't enough, Jordan had allowed this mistress to encroach into an arena that Elizabeth believed was sacred, her own household stability. "What is Ava doing reviewing my spending? Since when does your fling get to decide what is or isn't frivolous?" Elizabeth spat tears, threatening to spill. Jordan made an attempt at a calming gesture, but his words only fanned the flames. "She's helping me restructure. Her firm has great insights into corporate finances. This is about the business, Elizabeth. It's not personal." Not personal. Elizabeth recalled how intimately personal their marriage had always been. They built every aspect of their lives together, from small decisions about wallpaper colors to big entrepreneurial leaps that demanded everything from both of them. Now Jordan was shutting her out, consulting Ava instead. In a quavering voice, Elizabeth demanded, "Reinstate my cards. I am your wife. I have a right to our finances, and you know I've never been irresponsible with money." Jordan's face hardened with a new arrogance. "Not until we finalize our restructure," he said, referring to some nebulous plan Elizabeth knew little about. "I'll handle everything in the meantime." That moment, that cold exchange, was a harbinger of the bigger heartbreak to come. If Jordan was letting Ava control such details, what other aspects of their marriage was he willing to let her sabotage? As the days turned into weeks, Elizabeth discovered one more blow after another. The monthly allowance she used to cover household expenses had been slashed without explanation. The staff, including her personal assistant, was laid off. Bills began piling up, addressed to her name, but with no means to pay them aside from groveling at Jordan's feet. Friends and family started to notice. Elizabeth tried to hide her shame. She confided in her sister Caroline, who was enraged at Jordan. "This is financial abuse," Caroline insisted. "You should speak to a lawyer." Elizabeth shuddered at the thought. She still believed they could salvage their relationship, that Jordan would snap out of whatever daze Ava had put him in. Yet a small part of her whispered that maybe Caroline was right. Then came a fateful meeting at a hotel conference suite in Los Angeles, one that Jordan had insisted Elizabeth attend. It was a gathering of major tech moguls, including Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, who were rumored to be there to discuss new tech innovations in global logistics. When Elizabeth arrived, she quickly realized something was off. She saw Jordan in the lounge area, standing far too close to Ava, exchanging hushed conversations. Seeing Elizabeth from a distance, Jordan slipped away discreetly, leaving Ava behind. Elizabeth approached her husband with a forced smile. "I'm here," she said, desperate to maintain composure. "What's the plan?" Jordan gave a curt nod. "There's a closed-door session for the key players only. You'll have to wait outside." In the past, Elizabeth had always been included in these key player sessions as Jordan's partner and PR advisor. The subtle exclusion burned her pride. She swallowed her anger. "Sure, I can wait." After hours of waiting, she found Jordan and Ava laughing together near the bar. As she approached, Jordan's phone buzzed, and he stepped away. That was when Ava turned a chilling smirk on her face. "You know Jordan's a visionary," Ava said, swirling the wine in her glass. "He needs someone who can keep up with him on all levels: business, ambition, excitement." Elizabeth felt her face flush with anger. "I've been by his side for years. We built this together." Ava gave a theatrical shrug. "Maybe in the past. But times change. People evolve. I guess you were too comfortable." Elizabeth clenched her fists, biting back a retort. She was determined not to make a scene in front of such influential people. But oh, how she wanted to lash out, to expose Ava for the home-wrecker she was. Ava flicked her hair behind her shoulder, noticing Elizabeth's agitation. "Things will be better if you accept it," she cooed, as if offering advice to a friend. Jordan's moved on in more ways than one. The finances are just the beginning. Elizabeth's body went cold. She realized in that moment how truly precarious her situation was. Ava was not simply a fling. She was positioning herself as a partner in Jordan's professional and personal life. The credit cards were just one step in what looked like a systematic campaign to push Elizabeth out of everything she and Jordan had built. Still, Elizabeth refused to crumble. She left the event quietly, but her mind churned with rage and heartbreak. It was time for her to take action. She needed to protect herself, her assets, and her dignity. Little did she know that as she plotted her next move, Jordan and Ava were preparing a financial ambush that would push her to the brink. Only fate and an unexpected intervention by a certain CEO would alter the course of their twisted game. In the days after the Los Angeles conference, Elizabeth attempted to consult with attorneys. She picked up a referral from a friend who once worked with a high-profile divorce lawyer in New York. The initial phone calls were sobering, with Jordan's empire being primarily under his name and her credit cards cancelled. She had limited liquidity to hire top-tier representation. Even so, Elizabeth pressed forward. She managed to scrape together some funds from a personal savings account. Jordan had no access to money she had set aside from her early PR consulting days. It wasn't a large sum, but enough to secure a preliminary consultation. During that consultation, her lawyer, Michelle Liu, a bright and empathetic but hard-hitting attorney based in Houston, laid out the hard truth. Financial abuse and infidelity are serious grounds for divorce, Michelle said, scanning through Elizabeth's financial statements. But if Jordan's funneling money and assets into new accounts under his own name, or shifting resources to places you can't see, we need proof, and we need it fast. Elizabeth swallowed. She recounted Ava's involvement, how she was effectively orchestrating the restructuring. Michelle's pen scribbled quickly over a notepad. "You have a right to half of the marital assets, Elizabeth, but it looks like your husband is 2 steps ahead. We must move quickly." The plan was to gather evidence of Jordan's wrongdoing and file a court order to freeze marital assets, ensuring Elizabeth had a fair shot. But as they began drafting documents and rummaging through what records Elizabeth had, an avalanche of shocking details surfaced. Jordan wasn't merely cancelling credit cards. He was transferring stocks from their joint portfolio into an account under his newly formed trust. He had changed the authorized signatory details for a few of their properties, effectively locking Elizabeth out. He was also taking out lines of credit against certain properties, presumably to fund new ventures that, as Elizabeth suspected, involved Ava. The emotional strain weighed heavily on Elizabeth. She couldn't sleep, her appetite waned. Each day felt like standing at the center of a storm. Yet if she thought this was the worst of it, she was mistaken. One evening, after finalizing some documents with Michelle, Elizabeth returned to her mansion to find her keycard didn't work on the electronic locks. Pounding on the door, she shouted for the live-in staff if any were left. Seconds later, the door opened slightly, revealing Ava's face. "Jordan's not here," Ava said icily. "You should call next time." Elizabeth's heart hammered. "This is my home. Get out of my way," she demanded, trying to push past. But Ava slid in front of her, refusing to budge. "He told me you're not welcome here anymore until the legal mess is settled." Ava sneered. "I have every right to ask you to leave." Elizabeth was trembling with fury. "You have no rights here. You're the mistress, not the wife." With a cold laugh, Ava stepped aside and pointed at Elizabeth's luggage haphazardly placed in the foyer. "Jordan left these for you," she said. "He said to pack whatever else you need and let security escort you out if you refuse to leave." Elizabeth blinked away tears, her throat raw with outrage. She was being thrown out of her own home by the woman who had intruded into her marriage. That moment was a cruel epiphany. Jordan had not only cut off her finances, but now he was physically pushing her out of the place she had shared with him for years. Yet in all that darkness, a sliver of light emerged the next morning. Elizabeth received a phone call from a close mutual friend, Marcus O'Donnell, who worked with Jordan at a large tech conglomerate in Dallas. Marcus was someone Elizabeth trusted, an executive who had known Jordan since the early days. He had seen them build the company from the ground up. Elizabeth Marcus said, his tone urgent. "I don't know everything that's going on, but I heard from your staff that you've been locked out. There's a board meeting next week. Jordan wants to finalize some big decisions. If you can get to that meeting and talk to the chairman, maybe you can find some leverage." Elizabeth's breath caught in her chest. The chairman of this particular conglomerate was none other than famed CEO David Hartridge, known not just for his visionary leadership, but also for a strict code of ethics. Over the years, Hartridge had invested heavily in Jordan's business. He was the reason Jordan sat on that board. "He's not the type to meddle in personal affairs," Marcus warned. "But if Jordan's pulling stunts that compromise your share in the company, Hartridge might step in. He's big on fairness and hates scandal." It was the glimmer of hope Elizabeth needed. She thanked Marcus profusely. The plan was simple: attend the board meeting, confront Jordan in front of Hartridge, and present enough evidence of Jordan's wrongdoing to ensure the board and possibly the entire conglomerate would not stand for it. She spent the week gathering documents, bank statements, and text message screenshots that implicated Jordan in unscrupulous financial moves. Michelle Liu helped compile everything into a neat folder. "You need to be prepared for Jordan to lash out," Michelle warned. "He'll try to discredit you in front of the board." Elizabeth nodded her determination, overshadowing her fear. She practiced her speech, reciting it in the mirror of her modest hotel room, where she had temporarily moved. Heart pounding, she told herself that if there was ever a time to fight, it was now. Finally, The day of the board meeting arrived. Elizabeth dressed in a sleek black pantsuit that radiated confidence. She walked into the corporate skyscraper in downtown Dallas, her chin held high despite the knot in her stomach. She spotted Jordan in the corridor, flanked by Ava, and a couple of the board members. As soon as he saw Elizabeth, his expression darkened. "You're not supposed to be here," Jordan said, trying to keep his voice low. Elizabeth raised her chin. "I'm still an investor in your company. I hold shares. So yes, I'm attending the board meeting." Ava stepped in with a condescending smile. "Don't make a scene, Elizabeth. This meeting is for serious stakeholders." "I am a serious stakeholder," Elizabeth retorted, voice steady. "I'm your wife, still legally, and I'm half of this empire's foundation." Behind them, a tall figure approached CEO David Hartridge himself, a man in his 50s with graying temples and a firm handshake. He regarded Elizabeth with polite curiosity. "Ms. Alberts, I presume?" Elizabeth nodded, handing over her invitation papers and a letter from her attorney, which stated that she possessed partial shares. Hartridge studied the documents, then gave a curt nod indicating she was allowed to attend. Jordan shot Elizabeth a glare that spoke volumes. You have no idea what you're getting into. But Elizabeth did. She was here to preserve her dignity, her livelihood, and the legacy she had helped build. The meeting commenced in a sleek conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Dallas skyline. The board members sat around a large mahogany table, exchanging pleasantries about the upcoming quarter's projections. Jordan made a short presentation on a new partnership with a logistics firm, highlighting expansions and new contracts. A few board members clapped. Then came time for open discussion. Elizabeth raised her hand, clearing her throat. "I'd like to address some concerns about the financial structuring Jordan is proposing." She began, her voice reverberating across the silent room. Jordan's face reddened. Ava, seated beside him, tried to intervene. "We should keep personal matters out of board discussions," she said. But Elizabeth pressed on, raising the folder of evidence. "These changes aren't just personal," Elizabeth said. "They could affect company stability. Jordan is funneling resources into a new trust making questionable decisions without transparency. I have documents signed by him with references to Ms. Ava Monroe demonstrating a conflict of interest that could potentially compromise investor trust." A hush fell over the room. Hartridge's brow creased. "Jordan, is this true?" Jordan stood, scrambling for composure. "This is a personal matter. Elizabeth is overstepping her bounds." "She's not," Hartridge replied, his voice sharp. "If there's a conflict of interest that threatens the stability of our partnership, it's very much a board matter." Jordan's eyes darted between Hartridge and Elizabeth. For the first time, he seemed cornered, uncertain how to proceed. Ava shot Elizabeth a lethal glare, realizing that Elizabeth's boldness had forced the topic into official territory. The tension was palpable. Elizabeth's heart thumped so loudly, she was certain everyone could hear it. But she stood her ground. Continuing. "I also discovered lines of credit being taken against marital properties to fund expansions. These expansions could be legitimate, but the details are obscured. I have reason to believe Ms. Monroe is manipulating these finances for her personal gain." Murmurs rippled through the board. A couple members exchanged uneasy glances. Even those who might have sided with Jordan seemed rattled by the magnitude of Elizabeth's accusations. Hartridge steepled his fingers, evaluating the situation. "I propose we recess for 15 minutes. Jordan, Elizabeth, Ms. Monroe, please step into my office." Jordan inhaled frustration etched across his features. But he couldn't refuse the CEO's request, not without causing a catastrophic scene. The three followed Hartridge into a glass-walled corner office, shutting the door behind them. In that tense, enclosed space, the real battle began. Elizabeth laid out her evidence on the polished table before Hartridge. Jordan tried to dismiss it all as a personal dispute, but Hartridge was no fool. He could see the potential for scandal, especially if a partner was using company infrastructure for personal vendettas. Throughout this heated exchange, Ava attempted to deflect blame. She portrayed herself as a legal advisor, merely suggesting financial moves, disclaiming any wrongdoing. But Elizabeth's carefully compiled documents suggested otherwise. Emails, text messages, and proposed legal documents bore Ava's digital fingerprints. Hartridge's expression darkened. "Jordan, this is unacceptable. If these documents are authentic, you've put your personal entanglements ahead of corporate responsibility. I won't allow it under my leadership." Jordan's face went pale. He tried to protest, to label Elizabeth's claims as overblown, but Hartridge had already made up his mind. "Until this is sorted out, Jordan, I'm placing your proposals on hold. We can't move forward with any major financial changes if they're under this sort of ethical cloud." Elizabeth felt a surge of relief, a faint vindication. While she hadn't resolved the core issue of Jordan's betrayal, at least the board wasn't letting him run roughshod over her financial future. But Jordan, cornered and embarrassed, lashed out in desperation. "You can't shut me down like this," he snapped at Hartridge, voice tight with anger. "I'm the one who made that original deal with your conglomerate. You need my innovation." Hartridge stood up, bristling at Jordan's tone. "I'm the CEO, and you've just made me question your reliability and integrity. Watch yourself, Jordan." Ava stepped closer to Jordan, placing a hand on his arm to calm him, but he shrugged her off. "You'll regret this," he warned Hartridge, then turned to Elizabeth. "And you made a fool of me in front of everyone." Elizabeth clenched her fists, refusing to cower. "You did that to yourself," she said, voice trembling with both fear and resolve. Jordan stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Ava followed quickly, her heels clicking on the marble floor. Hartridge sighed, looking at Elizabeth, who was holding back tears. "Thank you for bringing this to my attention," Hartridge said. "I'm sorry about your personal struggles, but I have to protect the board's interests. If you need anything, contact my office. I'm not a family court judge, but I won't let Jordan drag the company down." With that, Elizabeth let out a shaky breath. She had achieved a small but crucial victory, yet she couldn't shake the nagging sense that Jordan, humiliated and cornered, was far from finished. She left the skyscraper, stepping out into the bright Dallas sun, uncertain, but determined. Little did she know this chapter was only the start of a far more explosive confrontation, one that would involve security teams, sudden betrayals, and a twist that would bring Jordan himself to his knees. Life outside the mansion was lonely, but Elizabeth was thankful for the reprieve from Ava's manipulations. She rented a small apartment near downtown Austin and used what funds she had left to secure her basic needs, while Michelle continued to press for a financial freeze on Jordan's assets. In the weeks following the tense board meeting, Jordan went surprisingly quiet. No more legal letters arrived. No more credit lines were sabotaged. He didn't attempt to contact Elizabeth, nor did Ava. Instead, it seemed as though they had retreated into some silent fortress, likely strategizing their next move. Elizabeth took advantage of the lull. She reconnected with old friends and mentors, explaining partially at least what she was going through. While many were shocked, They offered support in the form of references, moral encouragement, and occasional leads for a stable job or a business partnership. Despite the heartbreak, Elizabeth discovered a renewed sense of purpose. She wasn't just a passive bystander in Jordan's world. She had her own capabilities, her own strengths. Slowly, she started consulting for small tech firms, using her communications and PR background to help them craft compelling pitches. It wasn't a fortune, but it was honest work that reminded her she could stand on her own 2 feet. Then one evening, she received a phone call from an unknown number. A crisp, professional voice greeted her. "Hello, Elizabeth. This is Patricia Carlson. I'm an executive assistant at Tesla, working under Elon Musk's leadership team." Elizabeth's heart thudded. She had met Patricia briefly at a tech conference in Berlin 2 years ago, but they'd never exchanged more than pleasantries. "How can I help you?" Elizabeth asked, mind racing. Patricia hesitated. "I might have information relevant to your predicament with Jordan. Let's just say some of our legal divisions have been observing Ava Monroe for a while, and some red flags have come up." Red flags. Elizabeth's curiosity flared. "You're investigating her?" A slow exhale from the other end. "Our major concern is that she's potentially engaged in insider trading, or at least something that veers close to it. She's been known to manipulate powerful men to gain inside info on deals, especially around new technologies. We don't have direct evidence, but we do know that she's heavily involved in your husband's finances. We suspect she might be siphoning resources for her own agendas." Elizabeth's mind reeled. This was bigger than a domestic spat. Ava might be leveraging Jordan's resources and connections to stake her own claims in the tech world. That explained the sudden shifts in finances, the new trust accounts, and the lines of credit. Patricia continued. "We want to bring her down, but we need more information. You, Elizabeth, might be in a unique position to gather that." Elizabeth tapped her fingers on the kitchen counter. "Isn't that something your legal team handles?" A rueful laugh. "Yes, but we need Jordan's direct involvement. We suspect he's unwittingly giving her access to confidential materials through corporate crossovers or joint ventures. If you can help us prove it, we can kill 2 birds with 1 stone, protect Tesla's proprietary data, and help you gain leverage in your divorce." Elizabeth considered the offer. It was risky. If Ava was truly up to something illegal, Elizabeth could expose herself to potential backlash, but the lure of finally getting the upper hand was strong. "I'll do what I can," Elizabeth replied cautiously. "But how do I communicate with you about this?" Patricia gave her a secure email address and instructions on how to encrypt files. "And one more thing," Patricia said, before hanging up. "People like Ava are cunning. She'll anticipate your every move. Don't trust phone lines or any device that Jordan has access to. Be careful." Elizabeth thanked her and ended the call. Adrenaline coursing through her. For the next few days, she scoured her digital archives for anything that might hint at insider information. Jordan's old emails messages about collaborations with major tech companies like Tesla or Amazon, documents that Ava might have manipulated anything that showed a trail of questionable activity. She found a few suspicious threads, forwarded emails from Jordan's corporate account that were CC'd to Ava's personal address. Attachments relating to Tesla's Project Next Gen battery were among them, though none of this was strictly proof of wrongdoing yet. Elizabeth compiled what she could and sent them to the secure email Patricia provided. In response, Patricia confirmed that these were valuable leads, but incomplete. "Keep digging," she urged, "and let me know if you get direct evidence of deals or monetary gains tied to these inside details. Meanwhile, Michelle Elizabeth's lawyer was preparing for a preliminary hearing to freeze some of Jordan's assets. She insisted Elizabeth come to court to testify about the financial abuse and the suspicious activities they had uncovered. But Jordan's side surprised them by agreeing to a partial freeze without argument. "That's strange," Michelle said, tapping a pen against the conference table. "Why would he agree so easily?" Elizabeth shrugged, perplexed. "Maybe he realizes fighting me will look bad in front of the board." But Michelle wasn't convinced. "I suspect he's preparing a bigger move. Be vigilant. He may have more leverage than we know." The next morning, Elizabeth received an unsolicited text from Jordan. "We need to talk, face to face." She felt a swirl of conflicting emotions: anger, sorrow, curiosity. But she knew she had to tread carefully. She agreed to meet him in a public place, a cafe near the courthouse, where she could keep the upper hand. When Jordan arrived, he looked tired, as though the weight of his troubles had worn him down. He offered a half smile, which Elizabeth did not return. "Liz," he began using the old nickname he once uttered, with affection. Things got out of hand. She crossed her arms. "You think—" He sighed, scanning her face for warmth that was no longer there. "I want to settle this amicably. We can discuss spousal support, property divisions, everything. No need for a long, nasty court battle." Elizabeth let the silence hover. She wasn't naive enough to believe him at face value. "Amicably? Are you telling me Ava is out of the picture?" Jordan's shoulders tensed. "This is about you and me, not her. Look, maybe I got carried away with Ava's advice. She's a brilliant attorney." "She's manipulative," Elizabeth cut in sharply. He brushed the point aside. "Regardless, I'm willing to compromise, but I need you to lay off this insider trading nonsense. It's reckless. You're endangering my reputation." Elizabeth realized then that Jordan knew she'd been snooping into his communications. Perhaps Tesla's legal inquiries had begun reverberating in his circle. She saw the fear in his eyes. He was worried, if not about losing her, then about losing his empire. "You made me the enemy," Elizabeth replied, in a hushed, trembling tone. "When you let your mistress cut off my cards and throw me out of my home." Jordan looked away, shame flickering on his face. "I didn't handle that well. But you have to understand the pressure I'm under with these deals." She waited, letting him squirm. Then he continued. "You'll get a fair share. I promise. I just need you to stop meddling in my professional affairs, especially with Tesla or any other major collaborators. You'll ruin me if you do." A bitter laugh escaped Elizabeth. She thought of all the times she had stood beside him, protecting him, representing him before powerful players, forging alliances that were crucial to his success. Now he was pleading for her, not to ruin him. The irony nearly choked her. Before she could respond, Jordan's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and muttered a soft curse. "I have to go," he said, throwing some cash on the table for their untouched coffees. Elizabeth watched him leave, a mixture of pity and disdain swirling in her stomach. It was obvious he was desperate, but was this a genuine attempt at reconciliation, or a ploy to keep her from uncovering more incriminating information about Ava? That question lingered as she returned to her apartment, drained. However, a new email from Patricia waited in her inbox. It contained an attachment, a partial timeline of suspicious trades linked to accounts rumored to be controlled by Ava Monroe. There were large bets placed on Tesla's stock ahead of public announcements. Gains in the tens of millions. This is huge, Elizabeth thought. If she connected these trades to emails or calls between Jordan and Ava, it could be the smoking gun. And while Elizabeth had no intention of going to the feds on her own, Tesla's legal team could bury Ava, and by extension, Jordan's complicity, if he was involved. Elizabeth clutched her phone, anxiety coursing through her. She was walking a razor's edge. One false step, and Jordan might retaliate more fiercely, or Ava might strike. But a successful strike against Ava could free Elizabeth from this entire ordeal, giving her the leverage to secure a fair divorce settlement, or even land Jordan in deeper trouble, depending on his role. She reached for her phone to text Patricia when it buzzed in her hand. A call from an unknown number again. Tentatively, Elizabeth answered. A man's voice greeted her calm and steady. "Hello, Ms. Alberts. My name is Gregory Shaw. I'm part of CEO David Hartridge's legal counsel. He asked me to follow up regarding the situation with your husband." Elizabeth's heart skipped. Hartridge's legal counsel. "We understand from Mr. Hartridge's conversation with you that there might be unethical or even illegal behavior in play," Gregory continued. "The board is concerned about potential liability if Jordan's personal dealings spill into our corporate structure. We can't risk another scandal. Mr. Hartridge would like to assist you discreetly." Elizabeth exhaled slowly. She was on the cusp of powerful alliances forming against Jordan and Ava, but the more people got involved, the more dangerous it felt. Gregory concluded, "We'll be in touch with your lawyer. If you have any crucial evidence, Mr. Hartridge suggests you keep it secure. He wants to avoid a public meltdown, but he's prepared to do what's necessary to protect the company's interests, and that includes supporting you in your legal disputes, if it comes to that." Hanging up. Elizabeth felt a measure of validation. The cracks in Jordan's seemingly untouchable world were growing. Perhaps justice would prevail. Yet as she prepared to finalize the next round of documents for Michelle, a gnawing worry kept her awake at night. Cornered animals are the most dangerous, and Jordan, though once gentle and loving, had shown he could be ruthless when threatened. She braced herself for the storm that was surely coming. The next time Elizabeth saw Jordan in person, it wasn't by chance or a carefully arranged meeting. It was at the headquarters of Hartridge's conglomerate in Dallas. A sudden emergency board session had been called to address urgent corporate matters, and Elizabeth, having been notified by Gregory Shaw, arrived prepared. She walked into the reception area, her heart pounding with anticipation. Michelle Liu had insisted on accompanying her, but at the last minute she was called to handle a crucial filing. Elizabeth went alone, relying on the moral support from Gregory and the knowledge that Hartridge wanted the truth on record. Jordan was already inside the boardroom with Ava, who paced like a clad tiger. When Elizabeth entered, they both snapped their heads in her direction. Ava's glare could have sliced glass. Jordan's face was inscrutable, tense, angry, but also tinged with fear. Hartridge arrived moments later, trailed by a few board members and legal advisors. He wasted no time in stating the purpose of the meeting. "Allegations have come to my attention that Ms. Monroe has been engaging in stock trades leveraging proprietary information from Jordan's company and potentially from our own collaborations. We need to clarify the truth. Now." Gasps and murmurs filled the room. Ava's jaw clenched. "This is preposterous," she began. "We demand to see your proof." Hartridge nodded to one of his advisors, who distributed printed documents, timelines of suspicious trades, tied to accounts flagged by Tesla's legal team, along with correspondences that Elizabeth and Patricia had pieced together. Jordan snatched a packet from the advisor. His eyes swept over the page's color, draining from his face. Ava's lips thinned, and for a moment Elizabeth could see the faintest flicker of panic in her eyes. Hartridge pinned them with a stern gaze. "Jordan, you've been a valuable partner. I don't want to see your personal life derail your professional standing, but this is bigger than your marriage. Insider trading is a federal crime, and if Miss Monroe is using your business resources to pull this off, you're implicated." Ava recovered quickly. She placed a hand on Jordan's arm, her voice smooth. "This is a misunderstanding, David. Anyone can align stock trades with corporate announcements. It's called speculation." Elizabeth decided enough was enough. She stood. "Speculation is one thing, but forwarding private emails, entire business proposals, and preliminary press releases is not speculation. I've seen the messages. You're literally discussing the best times to execute trades based on announcements that hadn't been made public yet." Ava whirled on Elizabeth. "You have no legal standing to claim that. You're just a scorned wife trying to sabotage Jordan and me." Elizabeth's blood boiled. "We'll let the evidence speak. There are even time-stamped emails from Jordan's corporate account sent to your personal email, Ms. Monroe, discussing upcoming expansions and product launches. Then trades were executed in your name or trusts linked to you within hours." A hush followed. Jordan's hands shook slightly. He seemed torn between denial and guilt. After all, the evidence was damning. If he denied it outright, he'd appear foolish. But if he admitted his involvement, he risked criminal charges and the wrath of the board. Hartridge leaned forward, his voice firm. "Jordan, I need answers." "Were you aware of these trades?" Jordan stared at the table, words refusing to form. Finally, he managed, Ava said it was all above board, that it was just normal investing. Ava let out a short laugh, but it sounded hollow. "If you want to scapegoat me, Jordan, think carefully," she warned. "We made certain deals in your name as well. Your signatures are on plenty of documents." The entire boardroom seemed to hold its breath. Hartridge addressed one of his legal advisors. "Have we sent this to the SEC?" "Not yet," the advisor responded. "We wanted to confront them first." Jordan shot to his feet, panic etched on his face. "No need to escalate it. We can handle this internally. If I undo the trades, repay any gains, repay tens of millions of dollars," Hartridge asked. "And that would just be the tip of the iceberg if the SEC digs deeper. This is out of our hands if they launch a formal investigation." Elizabeth watched Jordan unravel. This was the man who had once been so composed, so unstoppable. Now he was cornered, sweat beading on his forehead. Ava, too, looked like a wild animal backed into a corner, eyes darting around the room. At that moment, a building security guard appeared at the door, knocking softly. "Mr. Hartridge, you asked for security on standby," he announced quietly. "Thank you," Hartridge replied, his tone like steel. "I believe we might need you." Ava's eyes flitted toward the door, then back to Hartridge. She adopted a pleading tone. "David, you know me. I've handled legal matters for some of the biggest players in the industry. I would never do anything to jeopardize your trust." Hartridge's face remained stony. "I trusted Jordan, not you. And this evidence suggests you're at the center of a major ethical breach. If you don't have a verifiable explanation for each of these trades and how you obtained insider information, I have no choice but to protect the company from liability." Suddenly, Jordan snapped. Fear twisted into anger, and he pointed a trembling finger at Elizabeth, You did this. You ruined everything because you couldn't handle that I moved on." Elizabeth steadied her breathing, preparing to reply. But Hartridge cut in calm yet firm. "Don't blame her for your poor decisions. You let your personal affair become a corporate liability." Something in Jordan cracked. He lunged toward Elizabeth as if to grab her documents or her phone, an irrational move likely spurred by desperation. But he never made contact. In a blink, the security guard stepped forward and intercepted Jordan, gripping his arms. "Stand down, sir," the guard said, voice authoritative. Jordan struggled, but the guard was a solid wall of muscle. Ava shrieked. "Let him go." "This is a private matter." Hartridge shook his head, anger coloring his features. "You just attempted to assault someone in my boardroom. Security remove Mr. Alberts from the premises." Jordan's eyes widened in disbelief. "You can't do that. I'm on the board." "Not anymore," Hartridge said grimly. "I can and I will. You're suspended pending an internal investigation. Once that concludes, we'll determine your status. Now go and take Ms. Monroe with you." A second guard stepped in, guiding Ava toward the door as she protested threatening lawsuits and defamation claims. But her words rang hollow, overshadowed by the looming specter of an SEC investigation. Elizabeth stood off to the side, stunned by how quickly it had escalated from a tension-filled meeting to an outright meltdown. As Jordan and Ava were led out, Jordan craned his neck to shout at her, "You'll pay for this, Elizabeth. Don't think you've won." But the threat carried little weight now. In that moment, Elizabeth felt the mixture of triumph and sorrow that comes with toppling a man she once loved. She hadn't wanted to see Jordan destroyed, only to protect herself and the life they had built together. But Jordan's actions and Ava's ambition had forced her hand. Hartridge dismissed the board members, soon after instructing his legal team to cooperate fully with any investigations. He turned to Elizabeth with a sympathetic frown. "I'm sorry you had to endure this, Ms. Alberts. I assure you we'll handle it lawfully. Whatever personal or marital disputes remain, I hope you find closure." Elizabeth gave him a small nod. "Thank you. I appreciate your fairness." She gathered her documents and left the skyscraper, the bright Texas sun striking her face as she stepped onto the street. The entire drama replayed in her mind. "He let his mistress cut off my cards, but the CEO called security on him." She thought a bitter yet satisfying sense of irony spreading in her chest. She wasn't naive enough to think it was over. Legal battles would continue, depositions would be taken, and the divorce was far from final. But in this pivotal moment, she had taken back her power, standing against the storm that Jordan and Ava had unleashed. And for the first time in months, Elizabeth felt a glimmer of hope that she might in the end be free from their tyranny. In the weeks that followed, word spread like wildfire. News outlets picked up on rumors of insider trading linked to a high-profile tech investor, hinting that a major name was under investigation. It didn't take long for the rumor mill to connect the dots to Jordan Alberts and his mysterious attorney-turned-partner, Ava Monroe. Elizabeth watched from the sidelines, inundated with calls and messages from acquaintances, reporters, and sometimes even old college classmates she hadn't spoken to in years. She ignored most of them, preferring to let the legal process unfold without adding fuel to the media frenzy. Jordan, under immense legal and financial pressure, attempted to strike a deal if Elizabeth agreed to keep quiet and not testify against him or Ava. Regarding insider trading, he would give her a generous divorce settlement. The settlement included alimony, a hefty lump sum, and properties that would secure her financial future. However, Elizabeth refused any agreement that required her to lie or withhold the truth if subpoenaed. Nonetheless, she allowed her lawyer Michelle to work out a fair settlement that didn't involve perjury. Eventually, Jordan capitulated, realizing he had to salvage what he could from the marriage and business meltdown. The final settlement granted Elizabeth a significant portion of the assets, the mansion by Lake Travis, ironically, and a sizable share of Jordan's original tech startup. Meanwhile, Ava disappeared from the public eye, her reputation in tatters. Rumors surfaced that she'd fled the country perhaps to avoid legal repercussions, while others suggested she was hiding out in some luxury villa, waiting for the storm to pass. Either way, her days of meddling in Jordan's finances seemed to be over. Elizabeth didn't celebrate Jordan's downfall. She quietly grieved the end of a marriage that had started in love and partnership, yet she also felt relief and a renewed sense of self. She returned to the Lake Travis mansion, deciding whether to keep it or sell. The sweeping views of the water brought back memories, some of which felt like knives to her heart, others that warmed her soul. She began a new chapter in her life, leveraging her PR skills to start a consultancy focused on helping women entrepreneurs navigate both business and personal challenges. She named it Phoenix Rose Consulting, symbolizing rebirth and resilience. To her surprise, she found more joy in championing other women than she ever did, standing behind Jordan at glitzy galas. She kept in touch with Patricia from Tesla, who occasionally updated her on the ongoing investigations. Whether Jordan faced criminal charges depended on further evidence. But at least for Elizabeth, the immediate threat to her assets and well-being had lifted. David Hartridge reached out, once inviting Elizabeth to a dinner with the board, presumably to mend fences. Elizabeth politely declined. She had no desire to relive the tension of board meetings or navigate corporate politics, where her personal life became public fodder. She was grateful for Hartridge's stance, but preferred to build her future away from the chaos. In moments of solitude, Elizabeth reflected on the entire ordeal. She'd once believed that love, loyalty, and shared ambition could conquer anything. Yet she also realized that unchecked power and ego could corrode even the strongest of bonds. Jordan's betrayal had been a painful lesson, but it set her free to discover her own strengths and a life not tethered to someone else's rising star. Yes, heartbreak lingered, and healing was an ongoing process. But Elizabeth found herself waking each day with a sense of purpose. She'd gather with female founders at local co-working spaces, host workshops on media relations, and offer moral support to those feeling overshadowed by bigger players. Each time she saw a spark of confidence ignite in another woman's eyes, she felt her own sense of wholeness return. In time, Elizabeth would finalize the divorce, sign the deeds, and officially start over. A sense of calm settled within her, like the slow, tranquil waves on Lake Travis at dawn. Her story, the humiliating card cancellations, the public meltdown, the mistress's meddling, would become a cautionary tale, one she shared sparingly, only when it might help others. Despite the scars, Elizabeth refused to let bitterness define her. She chose growth, empathy, and a belief that with the right support, anyone can rise from the ashes more formidable than before. Just as Elizabeth thought she had reached stable ground, fate tossed her another curveball. A month after the settlement, Michelle called her urgently. "The feds want to depose you," she said. "They uncovered new evidence Jordan may be involved in deeper crimes, bribery, money laundering. Ava might have orchestrated a network." Elizabeth's stomach dropped. Jordan never mentioned anything like that. They've found offshore transactions and documents with his signature, Michelle said grimly. 2 days later, Elizabeth sat in a stark federal office flanked by Michelle and 2 serious agents. They questioned her about Jordan's finances, Ava's role, the card cancellations, and philanthropic events that may have masked backdoor deals. Elizabeth stuck to the facts. She neither speculated nor dramatized. One agent, impressed, said, "You've been very helpful, Ms. Alberts. This case is significant." She left emotionally drained but relieved. She hadn't been dragged down with Jordan, but the storm wasn't over. Whispers followed Jordan was hiding at a secluded ranch, dodging the press. Ava had vanished. More subpoenas were issued. An indictment loomed. Elizabeth stayed focused on her consultancy, channeling stress into helping other women navigate business pitfalls. Her story, once painful, became a symbol of warning and strength. Then came the headlines: Jordan Alberts indicted for insider trading, fraud, and obstruction. Ava was named but still missing. The scandal rocked the tech world. Elizabeth issued a single statement. "I'm saddened by Jordan's choices. I've cooperated fully with authorities and continue to rebuild my life." Eventually, Jordan pled guilty to a lesser charge, offering a tearful courtroom apology. Elizabeth watched from home, tears in her eyes, not from triumph, but quiet grief for the man she once loved. Still, she understood consequences had to follow actions. That night, beneath the soft moonlight over Lake Travis, Elizabeth allowed herself one last cry for the past that died and the hope still waiting ahead. Life has a way of testing our fortitude when we least expect it. Elizabeth Alberts began this journey as a devoted wife, only to see her world upended by betrayal and financial sabotage. Yet what she lost in illusions, she gained in unbreakable resilience. Standing up to powerful forces and calling out wrongdoing isn't easy, but it's sometimes the only way to protect your dignity and your future. If you found this story gripping, insightful, or inspiring, we invite you to be a part of our community. Like this video, share it with friends who need a reminder that courage can emerge from chaos, and subscribe for more real-life drama and empowering tales. Let Elizabeth's story serve as a beacon, no matter how ruthless the betrayal. There's always a path to reclaim your power and build a brighter tomorrow. You too can rise like a phoenix.